Welcome back to the program. So some of you have sent me some emails saying that you're disappointed that Barack Obama cannot be prosecuted. Well, here's what I want to say to that. I'm disappointed as well. I would love to see him prosecuted because he's the one that masterminded the entire thing. And so obviously we want to see him pay the ultimate penalty for that. The thing is though, with presidential immunity, as I explained, he can commit a crime, and if it's considered official business, he doesn't get in trouble for it. But everybody else does, right, as he incriminates them. Well, I was having a conversation with my wife, and she was saying, well, what about if he's found to have been part of the Autopen administration? In other words, if he was illegally running a third term, as we all suspect that he was. Well, the answer to that question is yes, he can be prosecuted. Why? Very simple. Because that is not considered official business. He was not, quote, president of the United States at that time. So in the criminal conspiracy of the Autopen investigation, if they can prove through email communications, text messages, FOIA requests, email, whatever it may be, right, documents, things like that, classified information, if they can figure out that he was running the White House, as we all suspect that he was these last 4 years, and giving orders, then yes, he doesn't have presidential immunity. It's an ongoing conspiracy. It happened outside of the confines of him being president. So to ultimately answer the question, absolutely, he can be prosecuted. Now, hopefully that's what they're going to find. Maybe they're going to look into the chef that couldn't swim, meanwhile, drowned in 2 feet of water, mysteriously, and we now find out, and I showed you video of it from years ago, that not only could he swim, he took swimming lessons, and he was performing underwater flips where you change direction. I mean, these are advanced swimming moves. So who knows? Maybe they'll investigate him for that. I'm sure there's a whole host of other things that they can investigate him. I'm not saying that he's completely out of the woods, but I'm saying if it's based solely upon Russiagate, he likely is. But, like I said, there are other things to possibly get him on, including the big one, which is, of course, the Autopen. But never forget what this sniveling little toad said.
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. I'd be fine with that.
He'd be fine with that. Let's not forget what he said, okay? So there's a good chance that he could be wrapped up in the Autopen investigation. Let's just hope that that actually happens. Now, speaking of the Autopen investigation, just briefly, Neera Tanden is absolutely running scared. She has lawyered up. Jake Sullivan is lawyered up. Bernal is lawyered up. The doctor's lawyered. They have all lawyered up because they know that that investigation is just heating up. You're going to see a deposition on Kamala Harris. You're going to maybe even see another deposition on Joe Biden. Who knows? I don't know. Possible. But you're going to start seeing maybe Jill. So Comer's not going anywhere. James Comer, the good guy, not the bad guy. He's not going anywhere. He's continuing to bring these people in, build that case, and eventually refer it all to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, let's talk about this. Listen closely to Tulsi Gabbard, who, by the way, is an absolute rock star so far, and what she is talking about next with Benny Johnson.
You made a comment at a cabinet secretary meeting that has stuck with our audience, and they'd really love an update on it, and it's about the 2020 election. And you were talking about the security of that election, and you were telling President Trump that there's been evidence that has been uncovered of potential breaches. I'm not exactly certain, but I'd love a follow-up on this. here's the moment right here, and perhaps do you have any updates on the 2020 election or anything that you've found, Director?
The point that I was making there in the cabinet meeting was early discovery that I had seen from a whistleblower who came forward, who was working under CISA at that time, which is responsible for critical infrastructure and trying to protect against cyber vulnerabilities, critical infrastructure, including, of course, the integrity of our election systems. And what was interesting was seeing how this whistleblower brought forward information that CISA at that time, the federal government, was aware of vulnerabilities in our election machines, but they chose not to disclose that information to the American people or to the administration at that time. This is an area, of course, of critical importance, once again, for the American people to have faith in the integrity of our elections and that it is their voice that is heard through these elections. We're continuing to investigate this, and when we have information that we're ready to release, you'll hear about it.
Okay, so we're going to...
So there you go. They're going to be investigating the 2020 election fraud. That's what's happening next, okay? So this whole entire criminal conspiracy starts in 2016-17 and likely has gone on all the way to 2024. So if they can find documentation, if they can find emails, correspondence, text messages that show that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, obviously, out of office at the time, well, really Barack Obama, because Hillary Clinton can be prosecuted and anyone underneath Barack Obama can be prosecuted, brought up in what? A criminal conspiracy. So there's a good chance that Barack Obama is going to be brought up in the 2020 election fraud. But, you know, it's in here. It's in here, right here. This is it. Preserving Liberty, Chapter 3, right? Unintended consequences of big government. What do I talk about? What was even more concerning were the election-related companies also in attendance, such as Seidel, Dominion, ES&S, Eric Systems, Runbeck, Microsoft, Amazon, and several Secretary of State offices. So why would CISA be organizing secret meetings towards the late afternoon on Election Day with government agencies, including voting machine companies like Amazon and Dominion and the rest of them, and half a dozen Secretary of States? What were these meetings about? Why did they feel it was necessary to hide them from the public? Why did it take a FOIA request to find out about them taking place? Also, here's a fun fact. Did you know that Chris Krebs, the former director of CISA, who said that it was the most secure election in U.S. history, and Alex Stamos, the former Facebook security officer, went into the consulting business together? So I go through all of CISA in Preserving Liberty. I go through Chris Krebs. I go through every single thing from HAVA to the voting systems to the ERIC systems. All of it has been covered. And what's interesting is that in Preserving Liberty, a lot of what I covered is now all starting to come out. So just a little plug for the book. Now, this is great news because this means that they're going to look at 2020. And what have I been saying from the very beginning of this new term? I've been saying the same thing. Look at the 2024 election. Start first by bringing more DEI. We need a lot more DEI, right? We need a Department of Election Integrity. A little play on words there. And we need to open that up, fill it with forensic auditors, and let them go to work. Start at 2024. Show the 5 to 6 California House seats that flipped to blue when red was winning the whole time. Show the 4 Senate seats where Republicans were winning and then they flipped to blue at the last minute and all those seats were stolen. Then go back to 2022's midterms and go through Kerry Lake's race, Tudor Dixon's race, Oz's race, all of those things, and then go back to 2020. Now, they didn't create a Department of Election Integrity as I wish they would, but what they did and what are they doing now? They're looking into where I would say the majority of it all started, and that was in 2020. Now, again, they tried to rig the election in 2016. Don't think that they didn't, and I'm not saying that they didn't. Of course they did, but it didn't work, thank God. Okay? But in 2020, they wanted to make sure that it was going to be rigged 100%, and so of course they used the shadow of COVID and the lockdowns and to change all the laws, and we don't need to get into all the details. You've heard that ad nauseum. But what's interesting is that everything that I covered over the last 4+ years that I was banned for covering is now coming out. It is now coming out, and it is all true, and it is all evidence-based, and all it does is validates everything that I covered in the last 4+ years. So God bless Tulsi Gabbard. Hopefully everything continues on. They look into GBI strategies. They look into the quote-unquote water leak in Atlanta. They look into Fox News calling the election in Arizona with hundreds and thousands of people still waiting on that. All of this needs to come out. All of it. And hopefully it will. Okay. Next. Could it possibly be a little closer to the fact that Jerome Powell, the federal chairman, right, the Federal Reserve chairman, could he possibly be on his way out on his own volition? Gosh, I hope so. Okay, that's what I'll say, number one. But a big development happened today. And that big development was that I won't even call it a Biden appointee, an Autopen appointee to the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve resigned today. Apparently she's taking some cushy job at Georgetown Law and is going to start in the fall. Good riddance to her. What does this mean? This means that they now have a vacancy. And who fills that vacancy? The president does. So I can assure you that President Trump is going to put someone in there with the idea and focus that that person would eventually be what? Promoted to the new Federal Reserve chairman. So this is a great development. So let's see. Here it is right here. Autopen appointee Federal Reserve governor resigns, leaving Trump a vacancy. This person's name is Adriana Kugler, and she announced that she's resigning from her post next Friday, August 8th. And so it leaves a vacancy. And of course, President Trump immediately called for her to Powell to resign once again. And what's interesting is that the gentleman Pulte, and I believe he's the founder of Pulte Homes, which is a big home builder, right? These high interest rates are killing the housing market. It is killing the housing market. Every single sector is kicking ass and taking names, but without the interest rates going down, the housing market is stuck. And when the housing market is stuck, the rates are higher, consumer confidence is lower, and it's a big problem for a full and complete recovery. So when this guy who ran Pulte Homes or whatever is now pressuring and has said now for at least a month or two for him to resign, he said today he believes that he's going to resign. Quote, this was him on X. Even though he said Jerome Powell will never resign, I am now getting text messages that are telling me that he actually might be resigning soon. There's no word as to when or what time frame, but when the guy from Pulte goes out on X and says that, he must have some type of information because he's close to the Board of Governors, he's close to the Federal Reserve, he's close to where the money is, right? Because of what he does for a living. And he's saying that he's getting text messages from people that are close to Jerome Powell that are now indicating that he may resign. All I can say is get the out as soon as possible, okay? This man is causing us billions for sure, but maybe even trillions of dollars in lost market revenue. He cannot resign fast enough. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.